Have you ever felt betrayed by someone you loved? In today's story, I'm sharing the shocking truth behind the lies that shattered my life and my marriage. It wasn't just the affair, it was the manipulation, the hidden secrets, and the moments I thought I could trust her. Join me on this emotional journey, and if you can relate to my story, drop a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more real, raw stories about love, loss, and the strength to move on. Remember, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest growth. I had always believed in the stability of my relationships. As a writer, I spent my days crafting stories about love, loss, and redemption. But in the quiet moments of my own life, I never imagined that the woman I had married, Sarah, would be the source of my deepest pain. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly. Sarah, the woman I had once described as my soulmate, began to change in subtle ways. At first, it was just little things, like when she became distant when I tried to talk to her about our day. She wasn't interested in the stories I told about my writing anymore, and our late-night talks, once so easy and filled with laughter, became awkward and sparse. Then came the late nights. Sarah had always been a driven person, but now she was spending hours out of the house without any clear explanation. "I'm meeting some colleagues for a late dinner," she would say, or "I have to finish some work for a case tomorrow." But I noticed the inconsistencies. The usual routine when she would come home and tell me about her day started to dissipate. There were no more details, no more small anecdotes. One night, I found myself waiting up for her. It was already past midnight, and she wasn't home yet. The house felt eerily empty. The silence was broken only by my breathing and the ticking of the clock on the wall. I tried to focus on my writing, but my mind kept drifting back to the unfamiliarity of Sarah's recent behavior. When she finally came home, the way she entered the house felt different. Her eyes avoided mine, and there was a tension in the air that I couldn't shake. I tried to engage her in conversation, asking her how her evening had gone, but she gave me short, distracted answers. I could tell something was off. "Everything okay?" I asked cautiously. "Yeah, I'm just tired." "Long day at work," she replied, a little too quickly. I could tell she was lying. There was an edge in her voice I hadn't heard before. It wasn't just tiredness, it was something else. But I didn't push further. I knew if I did, she would only shut down even more. The next day, while going through some old documents in the study, I stumbled upon something that made my heart stop. It was a receipt for a hotel reservation booked for 2 on the night she had been working late. My fingers trembled as I read the details, confirming my worst fears. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. At first, I tried to reason with myself. It could have been a mistake. Maybe Sarah had gone on a work trip and booked the room without telling me. But deep down, I knew. The growing sense of unease that had been creeping up on me for weeks now had a name: betrayal. That night, when Sarah returned home, I decided to confront her. I didn't know how to begin the conversation, but I knew I couldn't go on pretending everything was fine. I had to ask the question I had been avoiding. "Where were you last night?" The silence that followed was deafening. It was the silence of knowing. I could feel the weight of her guilt before she even spoke. The truth was out there, but how would she react when the web of lies she had carefully constructed finally unraveled? As she walked past me without answering, my heart sank. The signs had been there, and now the truth was too. My world was about to change forever. The following morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that gnawed at me. The receipt I'd found for the hotel reservation haunted my thoughts, replaying in my mind over and over again. I tried to concentrate on my work, but nothing seemed to hold my attention. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face, the face I had trusted. The face that had always been my safe haven, now marked with the weight of her lies. My heart was heavy with the certainty that something was wrong, but a part of me still didn't want to believe it. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. I tried to reason with myself, but deep down, the truth felt undeniable. That evening, Sarah came home late again, just as she had so many times in the past few weeks. She looked tired, as always, but there was something different about her tonight. Her eyes darted nervously when she entered the house, avoiding my gaze. She had been avoiding me more and more recently, but tonight, it was as if she was avoiding something deeper, something she knew would come to light soon enough. "Sarah," I called, my voice steady but laced with the tension I could no longer keep hidden. "We need to talk." She froze in her tracks, the words clearly catching her off guard. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then slowly turned to face me. Her lips parted, but no words came out at first. "About what?" she asked, her voice tight. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I couldn't let this moment slip away. I couldn't let her continue to weave her web of lies. I had to confront her, no matter how difficult it was. "I know about the hotel reservation," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I know you weren't working that night. I found the receipt, Sarah." There was a pause, a tense silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Sarah's face went pale, and her hand instinctively reached for the countertop behind her, as if she needed support. "James, I can explain," she stammered, her eyes filled with panic. "Explain," I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "How do you explain this? You've been lying to me, Sarah, for weeks now, for months. I've been trying to ignore the signs, but now I can't." Sarah took a step forward, her hands shaking slightly. She tried to reach out to me, but I took a step back. I couldn't stand to be touched by her, not when I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall. "James, please, just let me explain," Sarah pleaded, her voice now cracking with emotion. "I never wanted to hurt you. You have to understand, I was confused. It wasn't about you. It was about me. I felt lost." "Lost?" I asked, my voice rising. "Is that what this is about? You felt lost, so you thought it was okay to betray me, to lie to me, to go behind my back and have an affair?" Sarah's face twisted with regret, her eyes filled with unshed tears. I'm so sorry, James. But it wasn't like that. It was just a mistake, a one-time thing. I never meant for it to go this far." I felt a wave of anger wash over me. "A mistake," I repeated, my voice low and dangerous. "You think this is just a mistake? You think I'm going to believe that? I don't care how sorry you are, Sarah. The truth is, you betrayed me. You betrayed everything we had." She collapsed onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. "I didn't want to lose you," she sobbed. "I didn't want this, but I didn't know how to fix things. I thought I could make it right, but now everything's falling apart." I stood there, watching her, my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces, but there was no sympathy left in me for her. The woman I had once loved was no longer the person standing before me. She had shattered everything, and no amount of tears or pleading could fix it. "You can't fix this, Sarah," I said quietly. "You broke it, and no matter how many times you apologize, I can't just forget what you've done." For the first time, Sarah fell silent. The reality of what she had done began to settle in, but it was too late. I turned away from her, my heart heavy with the weight of my decision. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. Our marriage, the life we had built together, was over, and nothing could change that. As I walked out of the room, leaving Sarah behind, the door to our past closed with a finality that neither of us could ignore. The days that followed the confrontation felt like an endless cycle of emotional turmoil. Sarah, once the woman I trusted with every part of my life, had become someone I no longer recognized. Despite the severity of the truth I had uncovered, she refused to let go of her lies. Instead of admitting to her betrayal, Sarah's tactics became more elaborate. More calculated, she was determined to manipulate me into feeling that I was the one at fault. I tried to focus on my work, diving into my writing as a distraction, but every word felt hollow, every sentence incomplete. I couldn't escape the constant weight of Sarah's presence in our home, despite the growing distance between us. There were moments when I thought I could escape the feeling, but Sarah's voice, her desperate attempts to justify herself, always seemed to find a way back into my mind. One evening, after another long and silent dinner, Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was softer than usual, almost soothing. "James," she began, her eyes casting downward, "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how you must feel. And I just want you to understand that I never wanted to hurt you." I kept my gaze fixed on my plate, not daring to look up. I had heard it all before: empty promises, remorse, and explanations that didn't add up. Still, something in Sarah's tone made me hesitate. There was a part of me that wanted to believe her, to return to the life we once had. But I knew better now. I couldn't just close my eyes to the truth again. She continued, her voice trembling slightly. "You know how much I love you, James. You know that. But there's something you don't understand. I wasn't looking for someone else. I was lonely. I needed someone to listen, to make me feel important again." I clenched my jaw. I had heard the same excuses countless times. I could almost see the rehearsed lines in her eyes, the desperation to keep me in the dark, to make me feel guilty for doubting her. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she'd been caught. "I wasn't happy for a long time," Sarah continued, leaning forward, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. "But it wasn't your fault. You've been so focused on your work and your writing. You don't see how alone I've felt. You didn't notice me slipping away." Her eyes welled up with tears, and she reached out to me, trying to touch my hand. "Please, don't blame me. I needed someone, and I'm sorry. But it wasn't an affair, it was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I recoiled slightly, but Sarah, sensing my resistance, pushed harder. "Don't you understand, James? This isn't about love. It's about feeling neglected, about feeling invisible. I'm just human. I make mistakes, but I'm still here. I'm still your wife. Please don't throw everything away over one mistake." Her words, though heart-wrenching, felt manipulative. She had turned the tables, now making it seem like I was the one who had failed her. She had managed to twist the narrative to make herself the victim of my supposed neglect, my emotional distance. And somehow, despite knowing the truth, I could feel the tug of guilt in my chest. "Sarah," I whispered, my voice shaking with frustration, "you're not the victim here. I didn't make you cheat. I didn't make you lie. You did that, and I can't just forgive you because you're lonely." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I trusted you, Sarah. You betrayed that trust. No amount of excuses can change that." Sarah's face crumpled, and she broke down into sobs, her tears falling freely. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you, James. Please, I'll do anything. I'll fix this, I swear." but I couldn't shake the feeling that everything Sarah said was just another lie, another manipulation. I wanted to scream, to make her understand the depth of my pain, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I stood up, feeling an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. The truth was too painful, too raw to process anymore. "Sarah, I don't know what to believe anymore," I said quietly, my voice filled with a sadness I couldn't hide. "I need some time. I can't keep doing this." And with that, I walked away. As I retreated into the other room, Sarah's sobs continued, but they no longer had the power to move me. I knew, deep down, that I was facing a crossroads. Either I would allow her lies to consume me, or I would find the strength to walk away and rebuild my life. But whatever path I chose, I couldn't go back to the way things were. The damage had been done, and no amount of manipulation would undo it. I just needed time to figure out what to do next. The days after our heated conversation passed slowly, each one stretching endlessly in front of me. Despite Sarah's pleas, her manipulations, and her promises to make it right, something inside me had shifted. I couldn't unsee the woman I had loved so dearly, the woman who had stood by my side through years of laughter and hardship. Now she was a stranger, a woman whose actions were stained with lies that had cracked the foundation of our marriage. Sarah tried everything. She told me she was going to therapy. She begged me to attend couples counseling, claiming it would fix everything. She even promised to cut ties with Alex, swearing that their affair was nothing more than a fleeting mistake. But every time she spoke, every promise she made, I felt a growing distance between us, a cold wall that she had built with her deceit. It was late one evening when Sarah returned from what she claimed was a work dinner that I learned yet another unsettling piece of the puzzle. I had been sitting at my desk, my fingers hovering over the keys, but my mind was miles away. I heard the door open, followed by the soft click of Sarah's heels on the hardwood floor. As usual, she came into the living room, barely making eye contact with me, before heading straight for the kitchen. I tried to act casual, to pretend that everything was normal, but the truth was eating me alive. There was no normal anymore. We were two strangers bound by a shared history, and nothing more. "Sarah," I began, my voice low but firm, "you need to tell me the truth." Sarah, who had been rifling through the refrigerator, stiffened. She turned slowly, an almost imperceptible frown creasing her brow. "What do you mean? I've been truthful with you." I felt my heart clench. How could she still say that with a straight face? How could she continue to lie to me like this, after everything? "I'm done with your excuses," I said, standing up from the couch, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "You keep telling me that everything is fine, that we can work this out, but I can't keep pretending I believe you anymore. I know about the other messages, Sarah, the ones from Alex." Her expression faltered for just a second before she quickly regained her composure. "James, please, you're not understanding. There's nothing going on with him. I've told you that. I was lonely, and I made a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. Don't you get it?" I snapped, my voice rising now. "I feel like I've been living a lie from the moment I married you. I trusted you, Sarah, and every time I gave you the benefit of the doubt, you just proved me wrong." Sarah's eyes widened, her breathing shallow as she took a step toward me. "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, James. Please, don't leave me. I'm begging you." I clenched my fists, my pulse pounding in my ears. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she had shattered my trust, how much I wanted to walk away from this toxic relationship. But something inside me, the same part of me that had loved her so deeply, held me back. I didn't know if it was hope or sheer desperation, but I couldn't bring myself to say the words that would end it all. Instead, I said the one thing that made me feel like I still had some control in this situation. "Tell me the truth, Sarah, right now, no more lies." Her face paled, her hands trembling as she avoided my gaze. I can't tell you everything, James. I don't know how to make this right. I was weak. I was foolish. But I swear, I never meant for it to go this far. You have to understand, it wasn't about him. It was about me feeling lost. I thought it was just a phase. I never expected it to hurt you like this. I laughed bitterly. You thought it was just a phase. I shook my head. You don't get it, do you? It's not just a phase. It's not just a mistake. You betrayed me. You betrayed everything we had. Her face twisted with regret, her eyes brimming with unshed tears, but there was nothing left to say. I could feel the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me. Sarah had lied, again and again, and each lie felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. "James, I'll do anything. Please, just give me one more chance," Sarah begged, her voice cracking. "I don't want to lose you." But the words felt hollow to me. The promises were just that, empty promises. I had given her chance after chance, only to be let down every time. The pain of being deceived, of being manipulated into thinking things would change, was too much to bear. For the first time in a long time, I realized something. There was nothing left to salvage. Sarah's lies had destroyed everything. There was no going back. "I don't think I can forgive you, Sarah," I said quietly, my voice steady but final. "I don't think I can live in this lie anymore, and I won't." I turned and walked away, leaving Sarah standing in the kitchen, the tears streaming down her face. The silence between us felt suffocating, and I knew, deep in my heart, that this was the end. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the lies or the silence that followed. It had been a few days since I had confronted Sarah, and the tension in the house was unbearable. Every time I passed by her, she was either crying or pretending like nothing had happened. The emotional exhaustion was beginning to take its toll on me. My thoughts were clouded with anger and betrayal, but somewhere deep inside, a small part of me still wanted to find a way to fix it all. But that was before I met Michael. It was a Saturday afternoon when I had to go out for a quick errand. I had been keeping to myself more than usual, spending my time away from Sarah, unsure of what to say or do next. As I stepped into the local coffee shop, my eyes immediately scanned the room, looking for something familiar. I spotted an empty table by the window and was about to head toward it when a voice stopped me dead in my tracks. "James." I turned around, and there stood a man in his late 30s, his posture relaxed but confident. I blinked a couple of times, my mind racing as I tried to place the face. The man's smile was warm, but there was something unsettling about the familiarity in his eyes. "Michael," I said, my voice faltering for just a moment. "Michael Davis." He nodded, extending his hand. "It's been a while. I didn't expect to see you here." I took the handshake, my mind racing. I had known Michael back in collegiate time when everything felt simpler. Michael had been one of Sarah's old friends, and though I had never gotten close to him, I remembered that he always had a certain charisma. But the smile on Michael's face now didn't quite sit right. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my curiosity piqued despite my discomfort. "I'm in town for a few days," Michael replied, shrugging slightly. "I moved away after graduation, but I've been meaning to catch up with Sarah. I heard about her from a mutual friend, so I figured I'd drop by." I raised an eyebrow. "You're still in touch with Sarah?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. It was a question I hadn't expected to ask. but it was one that had been gnawing at me ever since Sarah's affair had come to light. Michael hesitated for a moment, his expression shifting to one of guarded neutrality. "Yeah, we've kept in touch over the years, just on and off, you know." He flashed a half smile, trying to make it seem casual, but I noticed the way his eyes lingered a little too long. There was something about the way Michael spoke, something that didn't feel right. "Well, if you're looking for her, she's around," I said, trying to keep my tone as neutral as possible. "But I wouldn't expect her to be up for visitors. She's going through some stuff right now." Michael nodded slowly, as though processing my words, but I could tell that his mind was elsewhere. He wasn't just here for a casual visit. "So," I continued, "how's life been for you?" Michael leaned back in his chair, casually crossing his arms. "Pretty good. I've been living overseas for a while, but things have slowed down lately. Came back to reconnect with some old friends, and yeah, Sarah was one of them." Something in Michael's eyes flickered, but it was gone before I could catch it. The conversation moved on, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Michael's visit than he was letting on. I kept asking myself why Michael was suddenly here, now, of all times. Why had he sought Sarah out after all these years? And why had he been so quick to offer vague details about their relationship? Before the conversation could go any further, I felt an almost uncontrollable urge to leave. There was something unsettling about the way Michael spoke, as if he was skirting around the real reason for his visit. But I needed answers, and something told me that Michael might have them. "I need to get going," I said, standing up abruptly. "It's good to see you, Michael. Take care." As I turned to walk away, I could feel Michael's gaze following me. But what I didn't realize was that this meeting was just the beginning. The next chapter in my tumultuous life was about to unfold, and Michael would soon play a much larger role than I could have ever anticipated. What I didn't know was that the truth Sarah had been hiding wasn't just about her affair. Michael wasn't just an innocent friend. He was a part of the tangled web of lies that had ensnared our lives. And soon, I would find out just how deep those lies ran. The days following my encounter with Michael were a blur of frustration and confusion. I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with Sarah's old friend. There was something unsettling about Michael's presence, a lingering unease that I couldn't shake. But as time passed, I tried to push it to the back of my mind. The truth was already out there, the affair, the lies, the manipulation, but it still wasn't enough. Sarah had yet to fully come clean. She kept offering half-truths, promising that things would change, but every time she spoke, I felt the distance between us grow wider. Then, one evening, something shifted. I had been sitting on the couch, flipping through a book with little focus, when I heard the faint sound of Sarah's footsteps. I looked up to see her standing at the doorway of the living room, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. It was the first time in days that she looked truly vulnerable. There was no deflection, no excuses, just a rawness in her expression that caught me off guard. "I need to talk to you," Sarah said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer immediately. I had been waiting for this moment, but now that it had arrived, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear what she had to say. My mind was still filled with doubt, with anger, and with the constant question of whether I could ever trust her again. Finally, I nodded, setting the book aside. "All right," I said, my voice low. "Let's talk." Sarah stepped further into the room, her hands clasped in front of her, as if to steady herself. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke in a broken voice. "I haven't been honest with you, James. Not just about Alex, about everything." My heart skipped a beat. The way she said those words, about everything, sent a shiver down my spine. It was as though she was finally acknowledging the full weight of her actions, and for the first time, I could see the guilt in her eyes. I have been hiding things from you for a long time. I thought I could keep it all under control, that I could fix it on my own, but I can't, not anymore. She took a shaky breath, her voice cracking. It wasn't just Alex. There were other people, other things I did, things I'm ashamed of, and I never wanted you to know. I was scared of losing you, but I know now that keeping these secrets from you has destroyed everything. I stared at her, my mind racing. I had known there was more to the story, but hearing her finally admit it out loud was like a punch to the gut. It felt like everything I had ever believed about our relationship had been shattered in an instant. I wanted to scream at her, to demand every single detail, but instead, I stayed silent, letting her speak. I thought I could get away with it, Sarah continued, her hands trembling. I thought I could have it all, Alex, the thrill of something new, and you all at the same time. But it was never about love. It was about feeling wanted, feeling alive. I was so caught up in my own selfishness that I didn't see what I was doing to you, to us. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. I had loved this woman with every ounce of my being, and she had shattered that love with her lies and deceit. My chest tightened with the weight of the pain, but I forced myself to listen. I needed to hear this, even if it felt like it was tearing me apart. I'm so sorry, James, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible now. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought if I kept going, if I just kept it all under wraps, it wouldn't matter. But now I see that it does matter. It matters to you. It matters to us. For a long moment, I just stared at her. My emotions, a swirl of anger, hurt, and disbelief. How could she have done this? How could she have lived a lie for so long and thought she could get away with it? But as much as I wanted to hate her, as much as I wanted to lash out, I couldn't bring myself to do it. There was something in her eyes, something raw, something vulnerable that made me realize she was not the same woman I had married. I don't know if I can forgive you, Sarah, I finally said, my voice tight with emotion. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, and she nodded silently. I understand. I've ruined everything, James. I know that. I don't know if I can forgive you, Sarah, I finally said, my voice tight with emotion. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, and she nodded silently. I understand. I've ruined everything, James. I know that. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I stood up and walked toward the door, my movements slow and deliberate. I needed space. I needed time. I couldn't process all of this in one moment. I need some time, Sarah, I said quietly. I don't know where we go from here, but I can't keep pretending everything is okay. Not after all this. And with that, I left the room, leaving Sarah behind, her face streaked with tears. She had opened up, but now I had to figure out if I could ever close the wound she had left behind. The days since Sarah's last confession had been difficult, filled with long silences and heavy conversations that seemed to take everything out of me. I had tried to keep my distance, giving myself time to think, but every time I looked at her, every time I heard her voice, the weight of her betrayal suffocated me. It was a Sunday evening when Sarah called me into the living room, her voice trembling as she asked if we could talk. I had become accustomed to her apologies, her tears, and her attempts to fix things. But this time, something about the tone in her voice caught my attention. It wasn't the usual desperation. It wasn't the frantic attempt to cover up what had happened. It was different, more resigned. "I need to tell you everything, James," Sarah said quietly, her face pale, her eyes avoiding mine. She was sitting on the couch, hands clasped together tightly, a nervous tremor in her fingers. "Everything." I stood at the threshold of the living room, unsure of whether I wanted to hear what she had to say. But at this point, I had already heard enough half-truths. I needed closure, even if it shattered me further. "Go ahead," I said, my voice colder than I intended. Sarah took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling with the effort of keeping herself composed. "I told you about Alex," she began, her voice cracking slightly. "And I said it was a mistake, that it was just a fleeting thing. But the truth is, it wasn't just him." "Go ahead," I said, my voice colder than I intended. Sarah took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling with the effort of keeping herself composed. "I told you about Alex," she began, her voice cracking slightly. "And I said it was a mistake, that it was just a fleeting thing. But the truth is, it wasn't just him. There were other people," Sarah continued, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know why I did it. I don't have an excuse. I'm not blaming you, James. I was looking for something, I guess. Something I thought I needed to fill the emptiness inside me." I clenched my fists, my entire body tense as I tried to process what she was saying. "Other people," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "How many, Sarah? How many people?" I didn't count," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "It was never about love. It was about control, about power, about the way I felt when they looked at me, when they wanted me. And I thought I could keep it all hidden. I thought if I kept you in the dark, everything would be fine. But it wasn't fine. And now it's too late." I took a deep breath, my mind swirling with disbelief. The woman I had married, the woman I had loved and trusted for so long, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Not only with one man, but with multiple. And it wasn't even the affair with Alex that hurt me the most. It was the realization that Sarah had been living a double life, a life that I had never known, a life built on lies. "Who else, Sarah?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. I needed to know. I needed to understand the full scope of what she had done. "Who else did you sleep with?" Sarah's face turned red with shame, and she looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "There was Peter," she said in a barely audible voice. "He's a colleague of mine. We had an affair for months. And then there was Marcus, a guy I met at a work event. I never planned on it, but it just happened. And I didn't stop. I kept lying to you, pretending everything was fine. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Each name, each revelation felt like a blow to my chest. Peter, Marcus, and now Alex. All men who had come into our lives, and all men who had stolen pieces of Sarah's heart that I never even knew existed. "Why?" I asked, my voice shaking with emotion. "Why did you do this? Why did you lie to me for so long?" Sarah's face crumpled, and the tears she had been holding back finally spilled over. "I was selfish. I didn't think about you. I didn't think about us. All I cared about was myself and how I felt. I wanted excitement. I wanted to feel desired. And now, I've ruined everything. I've lost you, and I don't know how to fix it." I stood there, frozen, unable to speak for a moment. My mind was racing, a blur of disbelief and anger. The woman I had trusted, my wife, had shattered our marriage in ways I hadn't even imagined. And now, all I was left with was a woman who had admitted to betraying me in ways I would never be able to forget. I don't know what to say, Sarah, I said finally, my voice heavy with sadness. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this. You've taken something from me that I'll never get back. Sarah looked up at me, her face filled with desperation. Please, James, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right if you'll let me. Please, don't give up on us. But I already knew the answer. I had spent months trying to hold on to a marriage that no longer existed, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. But now, after everything, I understood that there was no going back. I don't know if I can, I whispered, my heart breaking. I just don't know if I can. As I turned and walked away, leaving Sarah behind with her regret and her lies, I knew the truth. The marriage we once had was gone, and nothing she could say would bring it back. The final confession had been made, but for me, the only thing left was to find a way to move on. I sat in the dim light of our living room, my fingers tapping absent-mindedly on the armrest of the couch. The house felt cold and empty, even though Sarah was just down the hall, probably lying awake in our bed, thinking about what had just been said. I could still hear her tearful voice in my mind, the desperate pleadings that had echoed through the house. But it wasn't her voice that kept me awake. Now it was the weight of the decision that loomed over me. For weeks, I had tried to piece together the fragments of our marriage. I had hoped, at first, that things could be fixed, that we could rebuild what had been torn apart. But every attempt to reach out, every moment where I tried to see past the betrayal, only left me more broken. The love I had once felt for Sarah, the trust we had built together, had been shattered beyond repair. And now, as I sat there in the silence of our home, the painful reality settled in. The woman I had married was no longer the woman I knew. I had tried to focus on the love we once shared, the laughter, the easy conversations, the quiet moments together. I had convinced myself that we could somehow find our way back to that place. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much had changed. There was no going back from the lies, from the betrayal, from the cold distance that had grown between us. Sarah's confessions had been the final blow. The affair with Alex, the other Menich revelation, was like a dagger to my heart. But it wasn't just the affairs that hurt the most. It was the realization that Sarah had never been honest with me, not truly. She had built a life of deceit, a life where she kept me in the dark, and where I was nothing more than a pawn in a game I didn't even know we were playing. Her lies had consumed our marriage, and now I was left to pick up the pieces of a life that no longer felt worth fighting for. But even as the anger and hurt surged within me, I couldn't ignore the small part of me that still cared for Sarah. I had spent years with her, and there had been moments, many moments, when I felt truly loved. It was hard to let go of that, to walk away from a life I had invested so much of myself in. But the truth was, Sarah's actions had left me empty. I couldn't keep pretending that things would get better. I couldn't keep living in a relationship where trust no longer existed. The decision wasn't easy. I thought about the future, about the pain of moving on, about the mess of divorce. I thought about our friends, our families, how they would all be affected. I thought about the life we had built together, all the memories that now seemed tainted. There was no easy way out of this, no painless solution. The weight of the decision pressed down on me like a heavy stone, suffocating me with each passing moment. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I made up my mind. I stood up, my heart heavy, but my resolve firm. I knew what I had to do. I walked down the hallway to our bedroom, my footsteps slow and deliberate. I could hear Sarah's muffled sobs from the other side of the door, but I didn't stop. I had heard enough. I had given her every chance to come clean, every chance to make things right, but it was too late. The trust was gone, and so was the love. I opened the door to our bedroom and stood in the doorway, watching Sarah as she lay there, her face buried in her hands. She looked up when she heard me, her eyes wide with hope, still clinging to the belief that I might somehow forgive her, that we could find a way back to each other. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah," I said, my voice steady but filled with the sadness of the moment. "I've tried, I really have, but I can't keep living in this lie. I can't keep pretending that things are okay. We're done." Sarah's face crumpled, her lips trembling as she reached out to me. "James, please, please, don't leave me. I can change. I'll do whatever it takes." But I couldn't listen to her anymore. I had heard it all before, empty promises, pleas for forgiveness. I had given her everything, and she had betrayed me in the worst possible way. There was no going back. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking slightly, "but it's over. I'm done." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving behind the woman who had once been my everything. As I stepped out into the hallway, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. I knew it was the right decision, but that didn't make it any easier. The pain of the past few months would take time to heal, but I knew one thing for sure: I was ready to move on. It was time to rebuild my life, to find peace, and to start over. It wouldn't be easy, but I had made my choice. And now, for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could finally breathe. This journey through betrayal and heartbreak has taught me the painful but necessary lesson that trust, once broken, can never be fully restored. I learned that love is not just about the good moments. It's also about honesty, loyalty, and respect. Sarah's lies and manipulations shattered everything we had built, leaving me questioning my own worth and judgment. But this experience also showed me the importance of self-respect. No matter how much you love someone, you can't allow their actions to define you or dictate your happiness. I realized that I deserve more than a life filled with deceit and empty promises. Moving on isn't about forgetting, it's about accepting the truth, no matter how painful, and having the courage to walk away from something that no longer serves you. In the end, I discovered that healing doesn't come from staying in the past or clinging to broken things, but from embracing the future with hope. My heart may have been shattered, but it's still mine to rebuild, and that's a lesson I will carry with me forever.